Hey guys, Matt here. Battle of the Atom is an X-Men specific event that features all of the main X-Men titles. All New X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, Wolverine and the X-Men, and X-Men. Here's B3 Comics' comprehensive rundown of everything you need to know going into the event. To understand the intricacies of Battle of the Atom, we first have to look at the past two X-Men events. In X-Men Schism, the X-Men split into two main factions. Wolverine broke away because he was upset with Cyclops' leadership decisions. He feared that Scott was turning young mutants into child soldiers. Scott countered that new mutants needed to be able to defend themselves from a world intent on killing them. Wolverine and those who sided with him left Scott and returned to the ruins of the Charles Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. They opened a new facility called the Jean Grey School. There, Wolverine hoped young X-Men could grow up like normal children. Scott still disagrees with Wolverine's perspective, but has said multiple times he will do whatever it takes to keep the students there alive. The next big X-Men event was Avengers vs. X-Men. While this was a much larger, Marvel-wide event, you really only need to know a few details for Battle of the Atom. In short, the Phoenix Force returned to Earth and attempted to take the young Hope Summers as a host. Unfortunately, she wasn't ready, and the Phoenix split into 5 other mutants who became the Phoenix 5. Through the course of AVX, fragments of the Phoenix were forced out of each host until the entire cosmic power became controlled by Scott. He was corrupted by its influence and became Dark Phoenix. During this time, he even killed his mentor and father figure Charles Xavier. AVX ended with Hope eventually taking the Phoenix Force back into herself and successfully controlling it. Along with the Scarlet Witch, she used the power to reactivate mutant genes around the world and stop Homo superior from being an endangered species. A defeated Scott was branded a terrorist and a murderer for his actions. Yet Scott showed little remorse. Although he did feel guilty for killing Xavier, he declared that he would do everything again to save the mutant race. He was later broken out of prison by Magneto and has since begun a mutant revolution. His mission is to protect mutants everywhere from oppression and persecution. Hank McCoy, aka the Beast, is vehemently opposed to Scott's way of thinking. He is also sad that as fellow original X-Men, they have drifted so far apart. Hank comes up with a plan to shock Scott into realizing the error of his ways. He travels back in time and retrieves the teenage versions of the original 5 X-Men and brings them to the present. When Scott is still unwilling to change, these teenage X-Men decide that they won't go back to their own timeline. Rather, they will stay in the present and try to change things for the better. This is where the storyline of Battle of the Atom comes into play. The series will feature X-Men from the future traveling to the present to warn our X-Men that the original 5 X-Men must return to their own time. If they don't, the future will be catastrophic for mutant kind. Battle of the Atom itself will play out as a crossover between 4 current X-Men titles. The first is All New X-Men, which is written by Brian Michael Bendis. This series focuses on the time-traveling original 5 X-Men. The first is Scott Summers, hereto referred to as Young Scott. The shock of being on the present is definitely hard on him. Others treat him based on how they view his older self. Many feel he's a bad guy because his older self killed Xavier. Even his own fellow time travelers seem to have lost some respect for him. Wolverine even threw out the idea of killing young Scott so they could potentially get Xavier back. Conversely, many others see him as a rebellious rock star, a revolutionary who fights oppression. Throughout the ordeal, young Scott has done his best to still be the leader Xavier trained him to be. The change in setting has also been tough for Jean Grey. Obviously, she is overwhelmed with the knowledge that she eventually becomes the Phoenix and is now dead. Her powers have also seemed to develop at an accelerated rate. She is more adept at telekinesis. In addition, her telepathic powers develop sooner than for her original self. Reading the minds of those around her, she sees what she will become and is shaken by that knowledge. Interestingly, while reading the mind of old Hank, she realizes that he had a crush on her when he was younger. This has led Jean to begin a relationship with young Hank. Young Hank was one of the original 5 X-Men who strongly wanted to stay in the present. Of course, he is just as smart as his older self and shares the same opinion of old Scott. This viewpoint also caused him to lose some respect for young Scott. Just like his older self, young Bobby serves mainly as comic relief. He seems to be the only one of the original 5 X-Men who hasn't been completely shaken by their experience. When it comes to interaction with his older self, he sees that the present-day Iceman's power is incredible. Young Bobby has finally begun to realize his true potential. Young Warren was the only one of the original 5 who voted to return to the past. Outvoted, he had no choice but to stay. His belief that the group should return to their own timeline was only strengthened when he met his older self, Angel, who I'll discuss later in the video. While desperately trying to activate old Hank's time travel device, Jean Grey mind-controlled him into staying in the present. Fortunately for him, the Stepford Cuckoos freed him from her control. Warren then decided to leave the original 5 and Wolverine side of the X-Men and instead decided to align himself with Old Scott's Mutant Revolution. Old Scott's team and their story take place in the X-Men series Uncanny X-Men, which is also written by Brian Michael Bendis. Cyclops, aka Old Scott, is obviously their leader. He believes in protecting mutants even if it means operating outside of the law. An interesting side effect of hosting the Phoenix is that now his powers are broken. He can't effectively control his eye blasts. This shortcoming eats away at him and makes him feel useless and unfit to lead. Also on his team is Emma Frost. She too was a Phoenix host and her powers are broken as well. Although she can still change into diamond form, she has lost her telepathy. Emma also ended her relationship with Scott, since he forcibly removed her portion of the Phoenix from her during AVX. A third Phoenix host on their side is LLYANA Rasputin, aka MAGIK. Her powers were broken but didn't necessarily make her weaker. Recently she has gone through an ordeal in Limbo that has left her changed. MAGIK can teleport almost anywhere on the planet and is also now able to teleport through time. She is currently receiving counseling from a Doctor Strange in the distant past. Magneto is another member of the Mutant Revolution. Although he wasn't a Phoenix host, his powers were also broken. He has trouble controlling metal but has slowly seemed to improve. In Uncanny X-Men he has also become a mole for S.H.I.E.L.D., giving them information on Scott's revolution. He later revealed that he was actually a double agent and merely wanted to keep tabs on S.H.I.E.L.D. Old Scott has become increasingly wary of Magneto. Old Scott and these older X-Men have also started the new Xavier School. As I said earlier, young Warren joined Cyclops and became one of his students. The Stepford CUCKOOS, Celeste, IRMA, and Phoebe also left the Jean Grey School as they decided they wanted to be with Emma Frost. Recently there has been some discord between the three. IRMA decided she wanted to show some individuality and dye her hair. Old Scott has also recruited some newly emerged mutants. The first is Eva Bell, aka TEMPUS. She has shown tremendous power bending both space and time. Quickly improving, she often creates time bubbles to trap her enemies. Christopher MUSE, aka TRIAGE, is able to heal. As he has grown, we have seen him repair even the most severe injuries. When his powers first manifested, he was arrested. Fortunately for him, Old Scott and his team freed him from captivity. Fabio Medina, who was nicknamed Gold Balls against his wishes, is another student. He can create balls of different sizes and shoot them in almost any direction. After some time with Old Scott, he tried to return home but was detained by S.H.I.E.L.D. He now realizes he must stay with Cyclops. Benjamin is a shapeshifting student that can mimic those he sees. We haven't seen too much of his powers, but we do know he's a flirt, even taking a pass at magic. Benjamin was also expelled from his college when it was discovered he was a mutant. The newest member of the team is David Bond, codenamed Hijack. He is able to manipulate any vehicle. He has also shown rapid progress as he took control of a S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier only a few days after his powers emerged. Old Scott often takes these students into the field with him, and they are sure to be important as Battle of the Atom progresses. Wolverine's side has its own mutants to oppose them though. As I said earlier, Wolverine started the Jean Grey School, and many of the older X-Men are teachers there. These characters are seen in the Wolverine and the X-Men series, which is written by Jason Aaron. The headmaster of the school is obviously Logan Howlett, Wolverine. He still has adamantium claws and a healing factor. Recently his character has evolved from being a savage attack dog into more of a reserved professor role. Many fans feel that he is turning into the new Charles Xavier. Wolverine's right hand is Old Hank, Beast. He was the one who retrieved the original 5 X-Men. Also, as I said earlier, he strongly disagrees with Old Scott and his mutant revolution. More recently, he had a scare when his mutation progressed, almost killing him. Fortunately, his younger self was able to stabilize him in his new changed state. Bobby Drake, Iceman, is also a teacher. He is also arguably the most powerful mutant on Wolverine's side. He has begun to use his powers in ways that can only be described as Omega level. Of course, he is still often comic relief and has begun a relationship with Kitty Pryde. WARBIRD is an art teacher at the school. She is a former member of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard who was assigned to protect Prince Kuberak before he left during AVX. She was able to remain on Earth though. Angel is another important faculty member. He is actually the older version of Warren Worthington. However, in Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force run, he became Archangel and his lover, Elizabeth Braddock, had to stab him with a life seed to stop him. Although she thought she freed him, the life seed actually ended Warren and Angel has become something completely new. He has the outlook of a child, but with the body of an adult. Currently, he is in charge of finding prospective students for the Jean Grey School. When he met with young Warren, his younger self was so frightened at what he becomes. It is also important to note that no one knows the full extent of Angel's powers. Beast noted that the life seed gave him a tremendous amount of energy. There's also a subset of teachers which form another team in Brian Wood's series that is simply titled X-Men. While the characters are also teachers, Wood's series shows them taking on missions. As of now, the leader of the team seems to be Storm. She obviously controls the weather, but has gone through some hardship lately. During AVX, she sided with Old Scott and the Phoenix Five. Her husband, Black Panther, stood with the Avengers, and because of that, Namor decimated Wakanda. Since then, their marriage has been dissolved and Storm has seemed to go through a midlife crisis. She is still a respected mutant though, and was given a teaching position at the Jean Grey School. Rachel Grey is another member of this team. She has telepathic powers and is from an alternate future. In her original timeline, she is the daughter of Scott Summers and Jean Grey. This has led her to have strange relationships with the other versions of her parents. As a pseudo-time traveler herself, she will definitely have a big role in Battle of the Atom. In the X-Men series, she has also openly challenged Storm's role as team leader. She strongly disagrees with many of the choices Storm is willing to make. Also on the team is the intangible mutant Kitty Pryde. She currently has her foot in almost every X title. In Brian Wood's X-Men, she is obviously an essential member. In Aaron's Wolverine and the X-Men, she serves as headmistress of the school, often picking up Wolverine's slack. In Bendis' all-new X-Men, she is a chaperone and mentor to the original 5 X-Men. She was even able to help Jean Grey harness her telepathic powers. Moving back to Brian Wood's X-Men though, Rogue is the next member. She can still leech powers away from other mutants. She is also a member of Captain America's Avengers Unity Squad, which is also known as the Uncanny Avengers. Rogue is X's with both Gambit and Magneto as well. This may or may not be important in Battle of the Atom. Elizabeth Braddock, aka PSYLOKKE, is a telepathic ninja. She is secretly a member of the X-Force as well. Unfortunately though, her time there has left her emotionally broken. She inadvertently killed Warren, her lover. In her attempt to help her brother in Otherworld, she gave up the ability to feel sorrow. And her relationship with Phantom X exploded in her face. Her mental state could severely limit her role in any series moving forward. The last member of Brian Wood's X-Men is Jubilee. She isn't actually a mutant anymore, as she was depowered during M-Day, but she is now a vampire. In the first issue of this series, she adopted a baby and named him Shogo. Her character has seemed to grow up and matured quite a bit lately. Shifting back to Jason Aaron's Wolverine and the X-Men, there are some other teachers who may be worth mentioning. Gambit is still throwing cards and being awesome. Northstar has recently gotten married. Toad is still a janitor but has actually started a relationship with Husk. Dupe is always around and would definitely be important if we actually knew what he was saying. The highlight of Jason Aaron's series, though, has to be the students. It is unclear on how big of a role they will have during Battle of the Atom, but they're still worth mentioning. First up is Quentin Quire, Kid Omega. This Omega-level telepath actually is the one who triggered the schism between Scott and Wolverine. He was forcibly dragged to Wolverine's school and has actually evolved in a positive way. He slowly reformed and has become a leader of his generation. He actually risked his own life to save Edie from the Hellfire Club, and the two began a romantic relationship. Edie, aka Oya, can shoot both fire and ice blasts. Initially, she was severely emotionally damaged after she was forced to kill. Recently though, she seems to have gotten over her depression and started smiling again. Another student, Brew, is an intelligent brood. Although not a mutant, the alien is allowed at the Jean Grey School. He played a crucial role in AVX as he was the one who came up with the plan to contain the Phoenix Force. Unfortunately, he was shot in the face by the Hellfire Club and reverted to a more primal brood form. Recently, he has regained his intelligence, and things are somewhat good for him. He has a crush on Edie that may cause some friction with Quentin. Evan is the next student. He's a clone of Apocalypse created by Phantom X. Phantom X gave him the codename Genesis and used a computer program to try to raise him to be good. Throughout the series, Evan has struggled to fight his destiny. He doesn't want to become Apocalypse and carry out the will of the Celestials. Instead, he tries his best to be good, the way he was raised. There are a couple of other students worth noting as well. Eye-Boy, who has increased perception and actually isn't as terrible as he looks. Spread is a newly emerged mutant who basically fits an overachieving stereotype. Shark Girl is another new mutant who is one of Angel's first recruits. The always popular Armor is also an older X-Men student at the Jean Grey School. Battle of the Atom will also have some wild cards as well. The biggest is Mystique, the Shapeshifter. She has popped up in many of the X-Men titles recently. In Uncanny X-Men, she forcibly replaced Dazzler, who is a mutant liaison to S.H.I.E.L.D. She is also attempting to buy control of Madripoor. In All New X-Men, she has been sending the original 5 X-Men in circles and having conversations with young Scott. Mystique is also in a relationship with Sabretooth, the brother of Wolverine. Both were teachers at the Hellfire Club's Hellfire Academy, and when the academy was destroyed, the two scooped up students before the X-Men could capture them. Mystique also has an alliance with the Silver Samurai. S.H.I.E.L.D. is another wild card to be aware of. Maria Hill is intent on stopping Old Scott in his mutant revolution. As I said earlier, she believes Magneto to be her mole. Unfortunately, she has yet to realize that Mystique has replaced Dazzler. The Uncanny Avengers may or may not pop up as well. Their general mission is to promote peace and understanding between humans and mutants. The team features both X-Men and Avengers and is led by Havoc, Alex Summers. Of course, Alex strongly disagrees with his brother, Old Scott's mutant revolution. However, he has had some positive interactions with young Scott. Rogue and Wolverine are both members of this team as well. Another wild card to be aware of is Nightcrawler. He was killed while saving Hope in the X-Men event Second Coming. More recently though, we have seen him mysteriously appear in Jason Aaron's Wolverine and the X-Men. We also know that Jason Aaron will be starting a new ongoing series featuring Nightcrawler called Amazing X-Men. That being said, Battle of the Atom seems like a great place for him to reappear. If you're looking to pick up every part of Battle of the Atom, it is relatively simple. In total, there are 10 issues in the event. Both the first and last issue are titled Battle of the Atom. Each of the other 4 series I mentioned in this video also get 2 issues. Hopefully this comprehensive preview sufficiently prepared you guys for Battle of the Atom. I highly encourage you guys to check out the lead-in issues to this event. The links are above me and in the description. Also, next week, Kurt will be back and the two of us will review part 1 of the event.